Tonight, we descend into the shadows of human interaction. We're going to dissect one of the most common and yet most brutal forms of modern emotional warfare. This is the dark psychology of ghosting. And you're about to understand why silence is, without a doubt, the cruelest weapon in the arsenal. It starts with a feeling you know all too well, doesn't it? A hollow space where a conversation used to live and breathe. You check your phone, nothing. You check it again an hour later, still nothing. That silence starts to get loud, deafening even. And a cold, sharp question begins to form in the back of your mind. What did I do wrong? I want you to know that question is not an accident. It's the entire point. You see, most people think ghosting is just someone being rude, immature, or maybe a little cowardly, a simple lack of social grace. But psychology says something much darker. It reveals that this isn't a passive act of avoidance. No, it is an active, deliberate choice to emotionally erase you, to treat you as if you never existed at all. And that specific act triggers a unique and profound kind of psychological torment. We're taught to see the ghoster as the one in control, right? The one holding all the cards, wielding their silence like a king wields a scepter. But let me ask you this, and just let it sit with you for a while. What if the person who ghosted you isn't the one with the real power? What if their silence isn't a sign of their strength, but of yours? We'll come back to that, I promise. Ghosting is the ultimate silent weapon, precisely because it leaves no visible scars. There are no bruises, no angry texts to show your friends, and yet it completely devastates your sense of reality. When someone just vanishes, they don't simply end a connection. They detonate a bomb in your psychological equilibrium. They create a void, a black hole of pure uncertainty that your brain will desperately and painfully try to fill. This is why the dark psychology of ghosting is so potent. And you have to understand, the pain you feel from ghosting isn't logical. You can't just think your way out of it. It bypasses your rational mind completely and strikes directly at the oldest, most vulnerable parts of your brain, the ancient parts that regulate your sense of safety, your need for belonging, your fundamental self-worth. It's a precision strike against your core emotional foundation. And as we go deeper tonight, we're going to uncover two critical things. Later, I'll show you exactly why even the most intelligent, self-aware, and successful people can be completely shattered by this silence. It has nothing to do with weakness. And there's one critical sign in their behavior that most people completely miss, a tiny clue that reveals everything you need to know. We'll get to that. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of the damage. How does this actually work? The first and most severe wound that ghosting inflicts is something psychologists call an ambiguous loss. If you can understand this, you're on the first step to understanding the pain. This is where the real torture begins. Think about it this way. If you lose your keys, you know they're gone. It's frustrating, sure, but your brain can process it. The keys are lost. It can accept that fact and eventually move on. But what if your keys just vanished from your pocket with no sound, no explanation? You'd check that same pocket 100 times, wouldn't you? You'd retrace your every step endlessly. Your mind would get stuck in an infinite, agonizing search loop because it can't accept a loss it can't confirm. This is exactly what ghosting does to your brain. Ambiguous loss is, quite simply, grief without closure. It's a state of loss without any certainty or clear understanding. So unlike a normal breakup, there's no resolution. The person is physically gone, sure, but psychologically, they're still right there, haunting you. By refusing to give you an explanation, the ghoster sentences you to a mental prison, a purgatory of unanswered questions. And your mind is forced to run on a treadmill of what-ifs, which is one of the most stressful and draining states a human mind can possibly endure. This mental prison leads us directly to the second psychological fracture. If ambiguous loss is the prison cell, then this next part is the attack on your very identity. We call it the shattered narrative. As human beings, we are fundamentally storytelling creatures. It's how we make sense of the world. Our lives aren't just a series of random events. They are stories that we write, starring ourselves. Every relationship, every friendship, every interaction is a chapter in that personal story. You were the protagonist in a shared story with this other person. Ghosting doesn't just end the chapter. It violently rips the pages straight out of the book, leaving a gaping plot hole you can't possibly explain. Now, here's where it gets insidious. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human mind. The ghoster's silence creates what we call a narrative void. It's a blank canvas. And since they've given you absolutely no information, no reason, no excuse, nothing, your brain will scramble to fill that void. And what's the only source material it has to work with? You, your own insecurities. So you start painting on that canvas. Was I not interesting enough? Did I say something wrong? Maybe I'm just unlovable. The ghoster never has to say you're inadequate. Their silence masterfully forces you to become the author of your own pain. And it gets even darker from here. We've talked about the mind. Now let's talk about our most basic biology. The third fracture is the deepest, the most primal. It is the attack on attachment. This is where the dark psychology of ghosting hijacks our most fundamental survival instincts. From the moment you are born, your brain is wired for one thing above all else: connection. Our survival literally depends on it. Imagine being a small child and your parent suddenly disappears without a word. The feeling wouldn't be sadness, it would be sheer animal panic. Ghosting hijacks this ancient biological system. The sudden, unexplained absence of someone you trusted and felt connected to feels, on a deep, primal level, like abandonment. It's not just your feelings that are hurt. Your very nervous system registers their silence as a direct threat to your safety and survival. And make no mistake, this isn't a temporary sting. The ghoster doesn't just leave. They install a virus in your emotional hardware. The long-term wounds are severe, creating what I call the poisoned well. This single act can breed social anxiety, it can make you avoidant and fearful in future relationships, it can instill a persistent, nagging fear of abandonment that follows you everywhere. Essentially, it poisons the well of your trust, making it incredibly difficult to feel safe and open with anyone ever again. The silence of one person can echo for years. Remember to stay till the end. The last point will surprise you the most. So, we've broken down why it hurts so much. We've explored the deep psychological fractures it creates in your mind, your story, and your very biology. But now, here's what nobody tells you about the true power dynamics of ghosting. This is where everything changes. We need to completely reframe their silence. It is not passive. It is not simply avoidance. It is an active and deeply aggressive tactic designed to seize absolute and total control. By refusing to communicate, they unilaterally end the conversation. They strip you of your ability to respond, to question, to defend yourself, or to get any form of closure. They hold all the power. And this is the cold, dehumanizing core of the entire act. In any healthy human interaction, you are an equal participant. You have a voice, your perspective matters. Ghosting denies you that fundamental status. Their silence effectively screams, "You are not worthy of an explanation. Your feelings do not matter. To me, you no longer exist." It transforms you from a person, a human being, into an object that has been unceremoniously deleted. It is a profound denial of your basic human dignity. Now let's go all the way back to that question from the beginning. Remember, what if the person who ghosted you isn't the one with the real power? We've seen how they seize control, how they use silence to create this agonizing void. On the surface, it all looks like an undeniable act of power and dominance. But that is the illusion. The illusion they so carefully project is one of strength, of cold, calculated control. The reality, it's the exact opposite. Their silence is not a sign of power. It is definitive proof of their profound emotional weakness. A person who is secure, mature, and empathetic is capable of having a difficult 5-minute conversation. The ghoster is not. They're so terrified of confrontation, so utterly incapable of managing their own discomfort that they choose the most cowardly path imaginable. They are not some calculated, powerful figure. They are an emotionally underdeveloped person fleeing a conversation they simply lack the character to have. This is the single most important thing I want you to take away from this. Let this sink in. Their decision to ghost you was never, ever a statement about your worth. It was a full confession of their own character deficit. They didn't reject you. They revealed themselves. They showed you in the clearest way possible that they lacked the courage, the integrity, and the basic human respect required for a healthy connection. So how do you get out of that mental prison they locked you in? What's the key? It's realizing that the only way to heal is to give yourself the closure that you were so cruelly denied. You have to stop waiting for an answer they were never going to provide. Because you see, the silence is the answer. You have to finally accept their silence, not as a question mark about you, but as a definitive period, a full stop, a statement about them. Their silence says, "I am not capable of respect." Their silence says, "I do not have the emotional tools to be a partner." And once you finally hear that message clearly, you can close the book. You must stop rereading the old, painful story and begin to write a new chapter, one where they are simply no longer a character. This experience is incredibly common. Yet it can make you feel so deeply isolated. So I want to ask you, have you ever experienced this? The sudden, unexplained silence from someone you cared about? Share your story in the comments below. Reading them helps all of us realize that we are not alone in this. If this look into the dark psychology of ghosting made you think differently, just know there is so much more to uncover about the hidden architecture of human behavior. So make sure you subscribe, because the next explainer we release will fundamentally change how you see people forever.